right. So welcome everyone to a very special episode of the Practical Broker podcast today. I have a lot of requests from time to, well, not just time to time, but quite often, actually, usually on a weekly basis. And somebody says, Chad, how did you get into podcasting? What do you do? How do you get started? Where do you go? And last week, coincidentally, I had this wonderful gentleman, as you can see here, Nicky Billou, on the podcast. And we started talking about podcasting and how to learn about it. And he says he runs this course. So we decided to do this special episode of podcasting basics, and which leads into a little bit of more of a higher level training too, that Nicky is running for people that want to get more advanced. And I'm going to let Nicky take it from here.
Chad, thanks a lot, man. First of all, it's a total honor to be back here with you and with your audience. I'm super excited to share the gospel of podcasting with as many people as possible. And I'll tell you something right now, Chad, and I know you agree with this, is it's super important for people to have a powerful brand, a powerful personal brand.
For sure.
Thought leadership, which is a big part of what we do inside of my organization, is very important. And it's a huge component of having your personal brand stand out. But you got to be thinking about not just what is your expertise, how do you get that expertise out? How do you turn it into intellectual property? How do you find out who needs what you have to offer? How do you find out what their itch is that you need to scratch? How do you position yourself, powerfully? You also got to be thinking about how am I branded? And a lot of people have been saying, hey, write a book, you get branded. And you know what? That's a good thing. I've written a few books. I'll show a couple of them here to you. So these are a couple books I've written. They're powerful for branding. But I'll tell you what, as amazing as these books are, nothing's been as amazing as having my podcast from branding point of view. Absolutely. Now, why is that? Why is that? Well, there's several reasons. Number one is, first of all, I get to reach people who I wouldn't otherwise be able to meet. Podcasting is something that's global. Yeah. I got people all over the world. I got people in 150 different countries who listen to me. I mean, it's pretty darn cool stuff, right? Absolutely. So that's one thing, okay? Secondarily, podcasting allows you to up-level your brand. What do I mean by that? I had some incredible people on my show. I've had people like John Maxwell on my show, Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank. I've had Chris Hadfield, the great Canadian astronaut, on my show. And let's face it, I'm not as big as these guys. No way, no how. But the fact that they trust me enough to spend half an hour to 2 hours with me and share their best information with me really up levels my brand. People listen to that and go, man, this guy's got some cool people who come on his show. He must be somebody. And that up levels your brand. Those things are super, super important. So if you're thinking right now, how do I reach more people in these days of pandemic and lockdowns and phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 and all this jazz that's going on around, and you're thinking, how am I going to get by this? How am I going to turn my business from tragic to magic? Podcasting's the way.
I agree.
So we want the people listening to this to understand that while it's a confusing time, it's a scary time, it's a crazy time, this is also the greatest time to be alive in history.
Right.
And there is chaos there, but we can create order out of chaos. And we're going to do that by launching a podcast, a 6-figure podcast that can help you get business, not just during the pandemic, but during the post-pandemic era, whatever the heck that looks like.
Sure.
So lockdowns are affecting people's businesses, right? I mean, this is a question that's probably gone through your mind, and it's gone through your audience's mind, right? And people have been thinking, is my business essential? I mean, we had a regression in Toronto, and I think also in Ottawa, and also in Peel region and other parts of Ontario, where we went back on lockdown. Yeah. Restaurants got closed down, bars got closed down, gyms got closed down. They're not considered essential, and people's businesses come to a screeching halt. So who gets to decide who's essential and who isn't? The world's changed. Yeah. Maybe it's never going to go back to the way it was, right? So uncertainty has been the order of the day. So many people are going, how am I going to succeed? How am I going to make money? Oh my God. And you've got to find a way to make money and to have an impact. Chad, you want to have an impact. I want to have an impact.
Absolutely.
Right? All of that is superbly important stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how you're going to navigate through these crazy, uncertain times. And we're going to show you how you can thrive, how you can drive, and how you can revive your beautiful, gorgeous, fabulous business.
Absolutely.
And people might be thinking to themselves, okay, this guy was on Chad's show last week, but who the heck is he? Why should I listen to him? Great question. So a little bit about my background. Okay, I've got a master's degree in international business from an Ivy League school. I graduated magna cum laude, went to Georgetown University. And my pedigree is I've helped dozens of clients add 6 to 7 figures a year to their income. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the proudest things that I really can say about myself. You know, my father was an entrepreneur, God rest his soul. He passed away in February this year. And, you know, he'd come to me all the time and he said, son, do you know we fed 51 families this week? So ours is 50 employees. And I'll tell you, that really always just touched me right here. And I want to help entrepreneurs be successful because entrepreneurs are the ones who create all the jobs. Entrepreneurs are the ones who have all innovation move forward. Entrepreneurs are the ones whose creativity makes our world a better place.
100%. I like that.
And I'm all about the entrepreneur.
Feeding the family. That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah. Thank you, Chad. Thank you. So we're going to specialize. I do specialize in helping entrepreneurs work less and get paid more. I'm all about that. And it's a beautiful thing. And you know, I've been an in-demand speaker. I've spoken for lots of companies. Earlier this year, I did a virtual talk for Royal LePage. I've also done some live talks at their national sales conference. I was the keynote speaker at their chairman's club. I've talked at Royal Bank, RBC. I've talked at Lululemon, Torstar Media, a whole bunch of companies, right? And it's because I'm so low energy. That's why people hire me.
Yeah. I'm going to sleep now.
Yeah, there you go. So I've also had the privilege of working with some of the best people in the world. Some people have called me the modern Napoleon Hill because I've gotten to work with billionaires, with Olympic gold medalists, with world record holders. And I host a fantastic podcast with tremendous guests called The Thought Leader Revolution. Folks like John Maxwell, Seth Godin, Barbara Corcoran, Ken Blanchard, and I've been a #1 international best-selling author. So, you know, I know a thing or two about personal branding and about how to use podcasting in order to help you be successful.
Absolutely. And I encourage all my listeners to definitely go see his show because it is an incredible show.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, this week, we've got a kick-ass guest. His name is Patrick Porter. He's the founder of BrainTap, which has this crazy technology for how to train your brain for success. It's awesome. You got to check it out.
Oh, cool.
So, as I said, people that I've had on my show, Seth Godin, Commander Chris Hadfield, John Maxwell, Joe Vitale from The Secret, George Zalicki, who's been the #1 person in 3 global network marketing companies, Brian Scudamore from 1-800-GOT-JUNK, Neil Pastrika from the Book of Awesome, Dr. Ivan Meisner, Larry Winget, the Pitbull of Personal Development, Bob Dole from The Secret, the creator of the Dilbert comic strip, Scott Adams, and one of the co-founders of Chicken Soup for the Soul, although I've had them both on, Mark Victor Hansen. I've also had Christine Carlson, who with her husband created the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff brand. Nancy Duarte, Steve Jobs' brain. She taught him how to do that incredible, iconic iPhone launch presentation. Marie Diamond from The Secret. Kathy Ireland, who went from being a great supermodel to a super mogul. Jen Wiederstrom from The Biggest Loser, and Marie Forleo, Oprah's coach. So these are some of the folks I've got to hang out with. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, great. So how's this apply to me? So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Does any of what I'm about to ask apply to you? Number 1, has your business dried up? And have you maybe even been afraid right now that if you go looking for business too hard, you're going to come across like you're an opportunistic slimeball being a technical term?
Yeah, that's a common belief out there.
It really is. Are you worried about the economy and your business's place in it? Is this uncertainty getting to you? Now, or maybe you're one of these people whose business is thriving and you feel guilty because so many of your peers are struggling. I know some people like that too. And maybe you're scared, maybe you're frustrated and wondering, hey, is business ever going to go back to normal, quote unquote?
Right.
Are you feeling lost, uncertain? You may be looking for answers. Maybe you're even starting to really freak out and not really have a clue of what to do to turn all this around and make it work for you.
That should be the word of this year, freak out.
Freak out, yeah, truly. So I got good news for you. None of these are the real problem. The real problem is that you don't have a podcast.
I agree.
100%. But if the listener's listening, they might be going, huh? You know, this is the dude from the immortal movie, The Big Lebowski.
Yep.
You seen that movie?
I have. It's awesome.
It's so awesome, man. It's so awesome. So, what are you talking about, man? But if you had a podcast, here's what would be happening for you, man. You'd be able to build that large audience of your ideal clients. You'd be able to promote your product or your service in a way that you can't right now. You'd be able to position yourself as the authority in your space. You'd be able to make a bigger difference and have a way bigger impact than you ever thought possible. And you'd be able to add 6 to 7 figures a year to your income. And 6 reasons for you to be able to podcast now. Hey, 55% of the North American population listens to podcasts. And podcast listenership is up almost 160% in the last 7 years. The size of the podcast universe is 3 times the size of the Twitterverse. And 77% of podcast listeners listen to at least 7 hours of podcasts per week. During these times of pandemic, that number is even higher.
That really surprised me when I saw that stat.
Yeah.
That's
but
awesome.
It's the truth, man. And it's probably even higher than that.
I would agree.
And the magic number is 7 podcasts per week. That number, 150 million, is actually too low. We're like in the 225 million range right now in North Americans that listen to podcasts. 6 more reasons to podcast. Ad revenue in 2016 was 169 million. 2018 was 400 million. So far in 2020, it's over 550 million, bro. So far. 38% of the people who listen to podcasts buy the products or services mentioned in them. Let me repeat that. 38% of the people who listen to podcasts buy the products or services mentioned in them. So that's over 1 out of every 3 people.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That is incredible.
61% of the folks listen to podcasts more than they watch TV. 65% listen to podcasts on their smartphone. And 35% of listeners have an income of over $100,000 a year.
Wow.
Are you persuaded yet?
I'm sold. I'm a convert.
You're sold. You're sold. And your audience members are going to be sold. But look, Chad, you and I know there's a right way and a wrong way to podcast, right? And we really want to give you the 6 keys to success in podcasting. So number 1, you need a message that attracts, right? A message that people, that's like honey out there to flies, right? And you need an audience of raving fans. You need great and relevant guests, and you need the right technology on how to record, how to edit, how to design, and you need fresh and relevant content every single episode.
Right, 100%.
And you need a way to promote the podcast and to convert listeners into customers. So what you need to look out for, there's 6 key mistakes you gotta avoid, right?
Right.
Number 1, you can't have a vague or a weak message. You need to know what your podcast is all about, what the message is you want to get out there to the people, and why those people are going to care. And for them to care, you've got to avoid the mistake of having no clear or niche audience, or if there's any American listeners here, a niche audience, right? Having the wrong guests on the air. Now, obviously, this is assuming that you're going to do an interview style podcast, and I recommend that for most people versus solo. Unless you've got a big personality and you can carry it off, it's better to have an interview style dialogue going on your podcast. Having the wrong tech, you got the wrong tech, you are in trouble.
Yeah, for sure.
Being boring, don't suck, right?
Don't fall asleep on my keyboard.
Woo! And you don't have a way to promote, you don't have a way to convert listeners into customers.
Right.
The first mistake, let's get into a little more deeply. You've got a vague message. And how do you know your message is vague? You've got a hard time attracting listeners and clients. And the problem is that revenues are stuck and impact is low. And what's the solution? Hey, we provide a fantastic solution. We do a message audit, and we've got this formula. It's 3 powerful steps to nail your message and attract the right listeners and get yourself hired. And that's super important, right?
100%.
We show you how to do that. Second mistake, no niche or niche audience. I mean, imagine if you were trying to be that Swiss Army knife. I mean, crazy, right? I mean, it's a fun picture, but it's not very useful. You want to be that knife. Sure. You want to be that solo knife, because that is what's going to get people to go, hey, I can use that knife to do something. I really can't use that Swiss Army knife for much. So,
and how
do you know?
Yeah, and how niche do you think you should do people you recommend them to be? Like, let's say I'll just use the example of the comic book industry, right? If somebody really loves comic books, do you think they should do a podcast about comic books or about Spider-Man comic books?
You know what, brother? If they could do a podcast about Spider-Man comic books, that'd be better.
That'd be better. So the more you're thinking, the more
Because
niche they can get.
The Spidey lovers, man. The Spidey lovers are going to be coming and going, man, that's that Spider-Man comic book thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Who doesn't love Spider-Man?
That's it.
All
Everybody loves Spider-Man. Now, how do you know if you don't have a niche audience? Is you're trying to be all things to all people.
Right.
If in business you're going, hey, I can work with anybody. That's the worst thing you can say in business.
Mm-hmm.
No, you got to say, hey, you know what? I work with thought leaders. I work with coaches. I work with Ottawa-based Christian businessmen like my friend Colt, your friend Colt.
Yeah.
The more niche, the better. And if you're not niche, you're going to be stuck in the sea of sameness. You're going to sound like everybody else. You're not going to stand out. And the solution is we got to audit your niche. And there's 3 secrets to help you nail your niche and to stand out. And it's so powerful and so simple. The 3rd mistake, wrong guest. And how do you know? You're bored when you're interviewing them and people stop listening to you. And here's the problem. When nobody's listening to your podcast, your credibility and your authority just plummet. Yeah. And here's the solution. I put together a secret get great guest formula for credibility and authority and attracting listeners. I'm one of the best on the planet at getting great guests. Mm-hmm. And I'll show you how to do it. And this is worth its weight in gold. Just knowing how to do this, knowing how to network with people like this and bring them into your circle is worth millions, millions. 4th mistake, wrong technology, man. How do you know your show sounds like crap?
Yeah.
You sound unprofessional, and that's not good because people stop listening, right? And
sure.
That has you lose credibility and authority. And listen, I've got a pro podcast tech checklist. You're going to sound like a pro and you're going to boost your credibility and authority. And you know what? That's something that I'm happy to actually put together in a PDF at some point and just give away to everybody because I think everybody needs to have that right away. 5th mistake is being boring. How do you know? You're so boring on the air and your content isn't fresh and people stop listening. You look like that guy. And that's how you lose listeners, right? And
right, sure.
I teach people how to create, right? You lose listeners when that happens. I teach people how to create a be unboring persona because you need to be you. You've got to be you. You can't be somebody else, but you can create a great on-air persona with fresh content to keep your audience engaged. Mm-hmm. And then finally, the last mistake is you fail to convert your listeners into customers. Now, how do you know? You're not making any money. You're not able to promote yourself. And that's a waste of time and money. And the solution is we've got a 3-step podcast promotion and monetization program that shows you how to generate up to 6 figures from your podcast.
Nice.
And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, here's a couple case studies. They're the Ottawa-based guy, Victor Menashe.
Yeah, I know Victor well.
I showed him how to become a thought leader. I encouraged him to create a great podcast. He's got over 500,000 downloads. Right now, he went from doing 6 figures a year to 7 figures a year. And he's got a lineup of clients, right? And he's recognized as the thought leader, the authority in his space. Yeah. They seek him out. That's a beautiful thing.
It is.
Yeah. And myself, in January, I generated a $35,000 coaching client, and he's actually paid me more since then. It's closer to $50K. Colt became a client because he heard me on the podcast. That's how come you and I met. And, this year alone, I've generated almost $150,000 just from my podcast.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I also got to partner up with Mark Victor Hansen because on my podcast, he came on the show. He and I co-created the event, Your Finest Hour, and we've had an impact on millions. Like I was the co-host with him on that show. He and I were there. Candace Owens, the famous YouTube personality, was there. We had Judge Kenneth Starr there. We had John Maxwell there. Freddie Ravel from Earth, Wind, and Fire was there. I mean, it was great, man, and phenomenal from an up-branding point of view for me as well. And we got to help millions of people, and that happened because of the podcast. So, and there's the podcast graphic.
There we go.
There we go. And we hit number 9 on iTunes. That was fantastic.
Wow.
So listen, folks have a clear choice when they're listening to this, right? They can basically pray and hope things will get better and do the same old things they've been doing and get the same old results. Or right now they can get expert help to build a six-figure podcast. And here's what I'm offering, brother. I'm offering to do a complimentary call with anybody listening to the show. All they got to do is they got to go to my website, ecircleacademy.com, and there's a button in the top right-hand corner, Chad, that says book a success call. It's a free call. So I'll do a consult call with them for 45 minutes on how they can get their six-figure podcast launch. There's no tricks. There's no bait and switch. There's, hey, let's have an honest call. And whatever I give you, you can take and go run with it. And listen, the reason I do this, if you're thinking, why is he doing this, is because at least a few of the people that are going to get on those calls are going to go, you know what, I need more help in this call. And that's how it works out for me.
Sure. And it was eCircle
Academy.com.
eCircleacademy.com. Awesome.
Yeah, brother. So, yeah. So, brother, that really is the long and the short of it is. And, any questions on your end, thoughts you have that you'd like to expand upon for the folks?
For sure. So coming back to podcasting, what kind of businesses do you think are applicable to podcasting? In my mind, I think every business is podcasting, whether you're running a bakery or the comic book store, or is there some industries you found have been better for podcasting than others?
If you're a service-based industry, I think podcasting is a very natural fit right away. So, if you're in the business of providing services like mortgage services, real estate services, if you're in the business of providing services such as coaching, consulting, that sort of thing, anything service-based for people. If you're a renovator or a contractor, all that stuff, a podcast could be a fantastic thing for you. But even if you're a product-based business, I think a podcast can make a difference for you, especially if you niche it enough that you really hit the people that love what you're talking about. Then I think it'll truly, truly work well.
How about the myth out there that a lot of people say, and I even struggled with this at the very beginning, was, well, I don't want to go online and start giving away all my knowledge for free on this podcast. Then why are they going to call me? They can get it all for free.
Okay, so here's the deal. So take some good notes on this, okay? Give your information away for free, but create memorable experiences for people, because people want an experience and they don't want to do stuff alone. Most people, even if you give them everything about how to start a podcast away for free, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're not podcast experts. And as soon as they get started, they're going to mess up something and go, oh my God, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
But if they got somebody there to help them, someone like myself or a community that's there, and they can see other people have done it, then you know what? It doesn't seem so daunting. And that's why it's important to do this in a group, right? I got a vision called #BillionMillionaires. I think you and I talked about this last time. I want to create the largest constituency for free enterprise the world has ever seen. 1 billion millionaires.
Yeah.
1 billion millionaires. So for me to be able to do that, there's no way I can do it alone. No way in heck. And none of us can do any of this alone. And people are trying to do everything alone. Stop trying to do it alone. That's why you're feeling confused, sad, scared, because you're trying to do things alone. Don't do it alone. Don't do 2020 alone. Don't do 2021 alone. Don't do life alone. Don't do business alone. It's all a team sport. Be part of the right peer group, part of the right community. That's a big part of what I create for people. I've got a community of heart-driven entrepreneurs who are all about making a difference for their fellow human being. I don't let anybody do this by themselves. I have them come and be a part of this, and they feel the energy of everybody else, and it lifts them. Sometimes the group needs you. Sometimes you need the group. And that's the beauty of being in a group.
For sure. Yeah. And I do that all the time in the mortgage world, right? Where my primary business is mortgage brokerage business. And I coach and help other mortgage brokers. I tell them how to structure deals on a regular basis. And people are like, why are you doing that? Because you just help each other and it comes back. And there is more than enough business for all of us out there. And you attract the right kind of clients to you. It is phenomenal. I've loved since I started podcasting, and the impact it's had on my business and growing my mortgage business and my private lending business has been phenomenal. So I can't stress it enough to everybody. If you run a business of any kind, start your podcast and definitely give Nicky a call and log in and get that initial 45 minutes and go from there.
Thank you, man. I think that's really important that they do this. because if they're feeling nervous and scared right now about what's happening in the world, they need to have people in their corner.
Oh,
They
yeah.
need to have more people in their corner, good people in their corner. And if this is something that inspires you and you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I've been thinking about it, maybe now's the time, pull the trigger. What have you got to lose? It's a free 45-minute session with one of the best podcasters in the business, and he's giving it to you for free. He's going to give you everything you need to get rocking and get going. And you know what? There's everything to gain and nothing to lose. And at the same time, you get to grow your circle by having more great resources in it, right? So Chad's here being a resource to you. I'll get to be a resource for you. And then maybe you decide you want to be a part of the community, and that's going to make the biggest difference in the world for you.
Absolutely. So a question on podcasting here. What do you think about, and I've had a couple clients ask me this that want to start a podcast, and obviously I'm not a podcast coach, but it's just more in discussions. When somebody has a broad topic, let's say a real estate agent, so they want to start talking about, a podcast about real estate. And then they're like, yeah, but I also like to do a first-time buyers and investor buyers. So do you think they should run two separate shows? One show specifically targeted first-time buyers and one show investors? Or just kind of do it as a theme or a season? Like how would you deal with that?
Theme or a season to start with, man. You don't need two shows to begin with. Let's just get one show up and running and going.
Yeah.
But then over time, you might want to do other podcasts. Like I want to do another podcast. I'm a history buff.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing a podcast on American history. And then at some point, I'm going to do a podcast on Canadian history. You know what I mean? It's good stuff. I'm a book reader. I love books. Love to do a podcast on reading books. And then I'm also a knife collector. I love collecting knives. So I'd love to do a podcast on some of the knives I've collected. It's all good. You can do podcasts on lots of different things. And the podcast doesn't have to run forever. So the Canadian history podcast could be something that maybe I run for 30 or 40 episodes, right?
Right.
And then I put it to bed. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. So that PDF format, how can people get that from you about the tech the right tech to use?
You know what? Let's just get them on the call because I haven't created that yet. I just thought about that when I was doing this with you. So I'll have to put that together. And
all right. So if you guys want that PDF, get on the call with Nicky, and it's ecircleacademy.com. And up in the right-hand corner, you click book your free call.
Good call.
Thank you very much, Nicky. It was an amazing episode and lots of gold and lots of value bombs in this episode. If you're an entrepreneur, I strongly suggest getting a podcast, and I strongly suggest you get on a call with Nicky. Thank you very much. It's Chad Robinson here at The Practical Broker.